My name is Hanan Abdallah. I'm the communications manager at Avixa, who produces the Infocom show. Super excited to be here today. Also a social media maven and fanatic. So yeah, I'm here to speak on that.
Awesome. And I'm Sean Cusick. I am the lead designer of SMA Events. We're a company that tells a brand story through a physical experience. So we've got sort of a sizzle reel. It's really just a whole bunch of projects we've done in the past that'll play above us, but while I'm talking. But realistically, does it not play? So what that means what that means to everybody in this room is we have in-house creative, we have an in-house fabrication floor. Really our big claim to fame in the event space is that we developed our own software to devolve really complex 3D models into things that robots can build. We can assemble them and put them together. So my background's in engineering. Obviously what this means for this group is we start incorporating things like video displays, interactive electronics. That's a giant bulk of our work. Mm-hmm. A lot of our clients are producers, brand activations, that kind of thing, and of course, pop-ups.
Yeah.
So that is why I am here today, talking with Hanan.
Yeah, and let's talk about, so what does a pop-up mean to you? Can you give us like a little bit of a sizzle reel?
Yeah, so a pop-up, an ideal pop-up, whether you're selling something or you're going for, it's like a food pop-up or something like that, if it's really going to be successful, the focus isn't on selling me something. The focus is on me enjoying my experience. I want to remember that experience, and therefore I will buy something, or I will share the experience on social media, or I will do all those things that we're trying to do.
Yeah.
So that's sort of the goal for a pop-up for me.
Yeah, and I almost feel like when I actually go to a pop-up that I am compelled to share on Instagram or on Twitter, it's typically something that makes me feel like I'm like transported into a different world, right? Like, and I emerge out of it like, whoa, what just happened? Like, so yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, I completely agree.
Awesome. And I think let's get into some of the pain points. So you build a ton with some really major brands, a lot of pop-ups. So what are some of the biggest challenges that you're facing or that you've seen have kind of come out of that?
Right. So pop-ups specifically, I think the major challenge of a pop-up is if you're running an event, there's sort of a main act that can help carry your show. So, it's like, you invite Maroon 5, a whole bunch of people are going to show up, and it can kind of cover some flaws in production. Pop-ups, if they're going to exist for a month or two, you have to somehow make the space speak for itself. Yeah. So that's a big thing, is that experience becomes a lot more important. Mm-hmm. Additionally, although this is true with all events, I think it's particularly important with pop-ups. Just the amount of exposure you're going to get over social media is very important. So you need people to come back. You need people to tell their friends that this is a really cool thing and actually worth going, not just watching my 30-second Instagram video and calling it good. Yep. And really the best way to do this, as kind of this last point we have on the slide, is you do it by telling a story. People throw around this word experience now like it's a adjective or
such a buzzword.
Yeah, right. It's like I literally got an email in my inbox like not that long ago. It's like, we have these experiential chairs, and I was like, I don't even understand what that means.
Yeah.
It's like, you sit in it or what?
Right.
So experiential isn't just a term that means cool. It really, if experience is going to work, it has to be tied into a story. It has to be tied into meaning, and that kind of stuff is really important at a pop-up.
Right, and it really does drive the emotion of the person who's experienced it. So they want to be able to do that. So
exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, and also, of course, create a vibe that's missing, and that's unique.
Yeah. Right? Yeah, I think, what we'll kick into here is just, these are some examples from the SMA Events portfolio of how we've tried to solve some of those problems in sort of creative ways. Yeah. So yeah, one big way to address a lot of that stuff and create a meaningful experience is, we're going to create a vibe that's not present in a space already. Yeah,
absolutely. So let's get into it.
Yeah.
This is absolutely my favorite project, by the way, that you guys have done.
Awesome. Thank you. This is one of our favorites too.
Yeah. I'm cheesy, so it works out.
So this project, this was at EDC in 2017, and then went to a few other places as well. This was originally an activation we did for Smirnoff, and then turned into something a little bit larger. Mm-hmm. So I'm sure people in this room understand EDC. Just in case you don't understand EDC, if you've ever put 1 million sound systems in a really loud place, turned them all up to 11, and just like went for it, that's EDC. There's a ton of noise, both visually and audio ways. So we're tasked with creating a space that people are going to notice and people are going to find meaningful in an area where you've got 100-foot stages, right? That are completely amazing and overly produced. They're gorgeous.
Yeah.
So the way we took this is we were like, all right, there's nowhere at EDC where you can actually go and relax. So people have been, people party all night for multiple days. How do we create something that's going to draw people into that space, give them something they want, and then keep them around?
Yeah.
So the big centerpiece that you've seen playing in the background is sort of the anchor point to that space. So this is a custom design, custom fabricated, about 25-foot tall aluminum heart with integrated architectural LED arrays. So we're not using big video wall panels. We're trying to make something a lot more ethereal and dreamy. So we're picking up a lot of reflections off the existing materials, not just putting up like a big giant video screen. The big thing that people recognize, like people see that from across the venue. They come, they want to take a selfie with it. That happens pretty much immediately.
Yeah.
They share it on Instagram.
There were even people that got engaged and proposed to in front of it.
Two couples got engaged.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know how that'll plan out in the
I
end,
don't know.
but they did get engaged.
Yeah. And this was by Smirnoff. And one of the points that we talked about yesterday was how important it was to tell the story and use a hashtag or use some sort of branding element that doesn't have the screaming, logo.
Right.
And it doesn't necessarily have to have that, which we're going to get into in a second. But
yeah, exactly. Yeah, one thing that people might notice is that it doesn't say Smirnoff across the center of the heart, and I've got a still. We've got a still in a second that'll kind of show what this looks like from a different viewpoint. Yeah, right here. So I know it's very tempting when people are designing pop-ups that there's always pressure from the brand to be like, I need to make sure my brand's in there. I need to make sure people know where they're at. But if you think creatively about your space, you can see all the arrows are pointing to all these Smirnoff logos that are sort of flanking the main piece. But that main piece itself doesn't just say Smirnoff on it. Granted, we've only run it this one way. We've never done test cases, but I think the crowd probably would hopefully agree with me on this. That what's the likelihood that people are going to get engaged,
exactly.
And what's your social media impact going to be if you make a very branded environment?
Absolutely.
People have a very high crap filters, so when it feels like they're being onslaught by traditional advertising, it's easy to turn that off and ignore your space.
Exactly. So not feeling like you want to be advertised to, but at the same time experiencing that event and being able to want to share it because it was a cool, immersive, engaging experience. And just imagine being having a photographer take a picture of you getting engaged and it saying Smirnoff on the top. You're probably not going to share that with your parents. Nobody's going to see that picture.
Right.
I'm sorry. No, it's not going to happen.
It's a little too on the nose for EDC.
Absolutely, yeah. Awesome. Well, let's move on.
Sure thing.
Cool. So yeah, using physical space to kind of pique the curiosity of the end users. Let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So another big struggle that you have in a pop-up space is in traditional event spaces, you might be looking at an engagement of around a minute as being a great thing, right? You're like, oh, I created an impression, that worked for my event. But if you're talking about a pop-up, you really want that engagement to be much longer than that. And you need to think about what are you going to do with your space that's going to cause someone to stay there for 15 minutes or 30 minutes. And I will say this, and I hope I don't get kicked in the crotch on the way off the stage, but personally, I believe that doesn't necessarily mean putting up one big giant video wall is going to solve all your problems. So
That's
there's, and granted I'm biased because we build physical objects, but
right.
but if you look at kind of an example we use for this is the GE Barbecue Research Center. This was done at South by Southwest. It was done at a bunch of different Super Bowls. Really the messaging here was to take GE's research activities, which is around industrial equipment, bring that down to a level that people actually would care about it. So what we did, we created this smoker, like a meat smoker that obviously served food, which is always awesome. At the same time, we layered it with a whole bunch of sensors, created custom visualization that streamed all that data to like 3 onboard video monitors. It pushed all that data to the internet at the same time, so this could be monitored, by anybody who was watching it online. And essentially, we created a platform for people to run barbecue experiments, which is sort of like GE's whole MO in their industrial research division. So, besides serving food and besides, having a cool video display that's there, you have a physical object that people are like, wow, what's that thing? And how does it work? And you get people asking questions and becoming invested in your space. We had the person who designed, I don't know how many people are familiar with Austin, but there's like a legendary barbecue place in Austin. The guy that designed all their smokers saw this in a press release, came by the activation, invited all of his friends. So we met like everybody that makes big giant smokers in Austin, because he's like, yeah, like people don't build smokers like this in Texas. So, you can create that kind of a viral, I guess, draw.
Yeah, and building some potential clientele around that as well. So that's really awesome.
Absolutely.
And one of the things that we talked about was the video displays. And some of the pain points there, because I think, I think some of us can probably agree that if you don't have the right displays outdoors and you're not working with the right budget, things can kind of go wrong. And you can try, fail, and adjust from there. So.
Yeah. I'm sure people in this crowd are perceptive enough to realize that some of those pictures of the displays, when they're being caught on an angle like this, like right now, seem really dark in daylight. Because we work in the physical space and then incorporate a lot of AV tech, we have a harder time educating the clients on our side to be like, hey, this is the reason you actually want to invest in good technology. And they're like, whatever, I got this like really good TV from Best Buy and it'll like totally
use
do
this. Yeah.
Yeah, like, let's just use that. We don't got any money left. It's like, all right, let's try that and watch what happens. So after having a very okay first run out, we were able to upgrade to much nicer daylight visible LED displays that actually accomplished the real goals of the activation. But, like everything, you're constrained by a budget at some point. So
exactly.
Got to start somewhere.
Yeah. Awesome. So let's move on to kind of bringing programming to the people.
Got it.
Yeah.
So this one we're going to talk about, I know this doesn't come up a whole lot in the AV universe, but it's becoming a very big draw from our side of things. There's a lot of mobile installations that we're doing, and the reason being it solves a whole bunch of problems with permitting and cost. So rather than having to draw a site permit and then set up your site for a day, run your event, tear it back down. Mobile, it's like you can go directly to where it's supposed to be, set up in 30 minutes, run that day, move it to the next place, and really create individual, completely micro-tailored experiences any place you're going. So this project that we're showing, this is actually like the world's first all-electric bookmobile that we did for the Oakland Library System. I hesitate to call it a bookmobile because books are maybe 10% of what happens.
Right.
And I think that's important, is when you're thinking about what your pop-up is, how you're going to program it becomes incredibly important. So when we were initially given the RFP, it was coming around, it's like, oh, it's going to be a bookmobile, it's going to give out books. But then the more we dug into it, it's like, well, what happens at a library and what is this designed to do? And the answers you start to get, it's like, oh, well, a library has cooking classes and it's like a community center and we have makerspace stuff. And they've really expanded well beyond books, which probably most people know, but it was all news to me when we started this project. So we built a space that allowed that to happen. So the space has integrated sound for performance. It has integrated TV monitors, so you can totally see in the corner people are absolutely like playing Halo or Call of Duty. Sorry, my bad.
Right.
Showing the last time I played video games. But then, on top of that, the sides were designed by local art groups. They're all done on vinyl, so those can be up for a year. They can be redesigned later, put up to represent new art groups. And by doing this, you're giving different people investment in your piece. So now they're going to spread this. It's like, hey, like all my artwork's on the side of the really cool Oakland Library bus. Like you might want to go check it out.
Yep.
So that's another way to sort of expand your, your viral network is how do you tie in the people that are, at your site already that are actually going to talk to their networks about it.
Yeah, and like you mentioned, there are, of course, AV components in this project specifically, but it is integrating people from all creative backgrounds and the community in general, which is what you're trying to do, is create the pull within the community and expose it.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. AV did become a big component in this that, kind of sorted itself out of nowhere. But I know a lot of the design, colors used and things like that are meant to reflect something that's going to stick out in a very gray urban environment.
Yep.
Oakland, like every other major city, is gray. So yeah, using some like super loud colors will absolutely help out.
Yeah, absolutely. And what does a process like this look like? So the client comes to you, has an idea, or maybe something that they're trying to accomplish, and then you guys come back to it. So can you walk us through it? We have a couple minutes here.
Yeah, sure. I would say our best partnerships that we have with clients are when people hit us with an idea. We do take on projects where people have, sorted out exactly what they want, and it's gone through like 15 iterations already. The problem with that is then, usually people don't understand how manufacturing works nowadays. We don't have a shop floor of 100 people cranking through parts. We really do have robots that are building most of it, and then we're sort of like an assembly shop. So things like really crazy geometry and like adding in motion is actually surprisingly simple for us because we always start from 3D. We always have very good knowledge of components. We give that to people up front so they can model light and sound and all that kind of stuff before the parts are even made. So if we can catch people when they're like, I have this idea and this is what, like, I want to accomplish something that makes people feel closer together at EDC. That was our prompt for the Loved Ones activation. The Oakland Library activation was, we're making a bus that represents all the services available at the Oakland Library that is available to serve people who can't get to the library. It's like, that is a great place to start, where we've got some parameters, but at the same time, we've got some freedom to really figure out how we can accomplish those goals in whatever the time is and whatever the budget is.
And then reverse engineer from there.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's awesome. That's so great. And one of the things that I know we talked about was really trying to avoid using Google as your creative team. Like, that doesn't work at all.
Yeah, I would say, I think the nails on the chalkboard moment for me is undoubtedly when someone sends me a picture from Google and they're like, yeah, I kind of like want exactly that. It's like, well, you should totally go to their website and contact them and see if they'll do it for you.
But how do you kind of approach something like that?
Yeah, I mean, the fact is like, the core of all these things that we've been talking about is, it's important to see the creative side of this as really a storytelling aspect.
Yeah.
So it's not just making something cool. So you might see something that you like stylistically, but the reality is, you're going to want to pull something together that's going to properly represent your brand. So if people just come up and they say, like, I want something to look like this, like, that's fine. That's a nice mood board starting point, but don't let that constrain exactly what your thing's going to look like, because it just might not be what you want.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll end on that. I mean, absolutely, just looking at the storytelling perspective, really understanding what you're trying to accomplish, and then being able to really engage everybody through social shareable moments, and actually teaming with people who know what they're doing, the right production, the right designers, and ultimately being able to kind of share that experience. And I kind of implore you to look around the show floor and find those social shareable moments and ask those questions, because when I was walking around, I'm like, what are people sharing on #AV tweets?
Yeah, I would say, it would be a neat thing to check this out. Like, I would say personally, you see a lot of people looking at the projection mapping sculpture over by the park. And like the things that you've never really seen before, you see a lot of cameras out and a lot of people taking pictures. So knowing how to pull that together into your event is only going to help you out.
Absolutely.
Or your pop-up, sorry.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you guys for joining us. We really appreciate you guys sticking it out and enjoying what we had to talk about today. And yeah, that's it.
Thanks for that.
Yeah, thanks guys.
Thank you all.